She looked me in the eye, belly full with another man's child, and said, "You should marry me anyway. It'll look cleaner that way, for both of us." That was the moment I realized my marriage had never been about love, not even about respect. It had been a strategy. Her strategy. My trust wasn't broken. It was harvested. For years, I believed I was building a legacy with a woman who wanted the same things I did. Family, loyalty, peace. But as she stood there, dressed in silk, a smug calm on her face, I saw it clearly. Isolde hadn't made a mistake. She had made a calculation. And she thought I was too composed, too polished, too safe to ever push back. But she forgot something. Even the quiet ones can choose war, especially when they've been humiliated by the person they built their life around. So I didn't shout, I didn't beg. I simply leaned into the very scandal she wanted me to bury and made sure it lit the sky. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. She looked me in the eye, belly full with another man's child, and said, "You should marry me anyway. It'll look cleaner that way, for both of us." That was the moment I realized my marriage had never been about love, not even about respect. It had been a strategy, her strategy. My trust wasn't broken. It was harvested. For years, I believed I was building a legacy with a woman who wanted the same things I did. Family, loyalty, peace. But as she stood there, dressed in silk, a smug calm on her face, I saw it clearly. Isolde hadn't made a mistake. She had made a calculation. And she thought I was too composed, too polished, too safe to ever push back. But she forgot something. Even the quiet ones can choose war, especially when they've been humiliated by the person they built their life around. So, I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I simply leaned into the very scandal she wanted me to bury and made sure it lit the sky. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. It started with a dry laugh. Isolde had just come back from a weekend executive summit in Palm Springs. She kissed the kids goodnight, glided into the kitchen with a glass of sparkling water, and waited until I sat across from her at the Marble Island. Then she exhaled like she was about to offer me relief. "I'm pregnant," she said, eyes locked on mine. Time didn't stop. It evaporated. I blinked once, then twice, but the room didn't shift. "You're pregnant," I repeated slowly. Her gaze didn't flinch. "By Luca, my boss." I didn't speak. The silence was weaponized, just long enough for her to fill it. "But I need you to be the one who claims it." "We're a brand, Grayson. You know that. If this gets out, it'll ruin everything. Your image, the firm, the donors, the whole narrative." I was still frozen. Somewhere in the apartment, Jonah was humming in the hallway, brushing his teeth. Sage was talking to her dolls. Normalcy was happening 2 doors down, and this woman, my wife, was burning the foundation under it with the calm of a CFO balancing a budget. "I'm not asking you to raise the child," she continued. "We can say it's yours, then arrange a separation. Clean, no mess." I stood up. She watched me as if I was the unstable one, and that's what broke me. The confidence in her manipulation, the unapologetic audacity. "Who else knows?" I asked. "Just Luca and Clarice." "But she won't say anything. She doesn't want the scandal either." Clarice, Luca's wife, the one who always looked 10 seconds away from tears at every charity gala. That Clarice. "You came back from your affair and decided to manage your crisis like a PR rollout," I said. "You're being dramatic," she snapped, voice clipped. "This isn't about your ego, Grayson. It's about preservation." I stared at her, trying to understand what part of her still thought she was talking to the same man. The one who once covered for her missed fund deadlines, who softened the family tensions when she skipped Jonah's school play, who deflected every boardroom whisper about her strange closeness to Luca. The man who still slept beside her while she was carrying another man's child. "This child," I said slowly, "will grow up knowing I was the lie you built around it. No, this child will grow up with comfort, with protection. Built on fraud." She rolled her eyes. "You think our friends don't do worse? I think you're confusing comfort with cowardice." There was a long silence. Then she tried to smile, as if some charm still remained between us. "Grayson, if this story breaks the wrong way, you'll lose more than I will." There it was. The blackmail, wrapped in a whisper. I walked past her and stopped at the entrance of the hallway, where our wedding photo hung in a silver frame. I stared at it long enough for my stomach to flip. Then I turned and said the last thing I'd say to her that night. "You just mistook silence for consent. You'll regret that." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. There wasn't space for grief, not yet. There was only the clicking of my mind as the old scaffolding collapsed and something colder, cleaner, took shape. By morning, the plan had begun forming. I called Kieran Wells, my attorney and longtime friend, before sunrise. He answered with a yawn. "Tell me you're not in jail," he said. "I'm not, but someone's about to be in hell." That got him fully awake. Within the hour, I'd briefed him. No dramatics, no embellishment, just the facts, exactly as Isolde laid them out. Kieran took notes, then sighed. "She's bold. I'll give her that. She's not bold. She's entitled. Big difference. What do you want to do?" "I want a strategy, one she can't see coming." There was a pause. Then Kieran said, "We'll start with locking down custody, even before she realizes a war's coming." "And then?" He didn't answer for a second. Then we ruin the mythology, piece by piece." For the next 2 weeks, I pretended. I kissed her cheek in public. I showed up at a foundation dinner with her on my arm. I held Sage's hand while Isolde gave a speech at the launch of a new women's leadership initiative. People clapped. Photos were taken. And behind my smile, I was engineering the quiet demolition of her legacy. She didn't know I had eyes in Luca's firm. Didn't know I was already feeding anonymous tips to Clarice, who, as it turned out, was far less passive than her watery smiles suggested. Clarice had receipts. That came later. For now, I simply waited. I studied her habits, her weaknesses, the way she underestimated silence. And on the night she casually told Jonah, "Daddy and I are going to be parents again," I knew it was time to build the stage. Not a courtroom, not a fight, a show, a baby shower. To the outside world, we were still the Pierce Wynn brand. Power couple, legacy family. The kind of unit people praised in panel discussions and PowerPoint slides about modern elite resilience. We were in brochures, on donor walls, in curated family portraits hanging in 3 different nonprofit boardrooms. But at home, I was orchestrating a funeral. Not for a person, for a lie. And Isolde didn't see it coming. She floated through those 2 weeks like she'd already secured her political pardon. Luca had slipped her a diamond brooch during one of their rendezvous, something I only discovered later from Clarice. It was shaped like a serpent biting its own tail. Fitting. She wore it to brunch with Gwyneth and Marla like she was above suspicion, above consequences. And yet, she still smiled at me like nothing had changed. That's what unnerved me most. The presumption that my restraint meant defeat. I took her smiling as a dare. Every night after the kids were asleep, I'd sit in my study and comb through old donation records, phone logs, and archived security footage from our firm's Manhattan office. I built timelines, cross-referenced hotel bills with Isolde's networking retreats. I even reached out to Clarice via a burner email with a simple subject line: "You deserve better. So do I." She responded in 6 minutes. The first time I met Clarice in person was in a private room at the Lowell. She wore oversized sunglasses and carried an envelope like she was transferring state secrets. There was a nervous grace to her, but underneath she burned, not loud, controlled. "She's pregnant, isn't she?" Clarice asked before even sitting down.
"Yes," she nodded. "And Luca's excited. Says it's the best mistake of his life." "Charming." She opened the envelope. "These are bank transfers. Luca moved funds into a shell account tied to your wife. Twice. I believe it was hush money. Or a way to secure her silence if this ever became inconvenient." I glanced through the statements. The numbers didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was Clarice's lack of hesitation. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. She smiled, but there was steel behind it. "Because if I burn alone, it's just tragedy. But if we burn them together, it's justice." Back at home, Jonah started asking questions. He's always been perceptive, like he's storing up quiet observations for the perfect moment. "Why is Mom always on the phone with Luca?" he asked one evening over chess. I paused mid-move. "What makes you think that?" "She says his name a lot when she thinks no one's listening, and she talks like she's trying to convince someone. Not like friends." I stared at my son, his wide eyes so full of careful logic, and knew I couldn't lie. Not entirely. "Jonah," I said carefully, "sometimes adults make choices that confuse even themselves, but none of it, is your fault, or Sage's." He nodded, then looked back down at the board. "I don't want to live with her if you're not here." The pieces blurred. That was the first time I nearly broke. But I held it. I held it because I needed to be strong, for him, for both of them. Kiran came over that weekend to finalize the custody prep. He was sharp, ruthless, and exactly the person I needed in my corner. "She's going to weaponize her image," he warned. "The philanthropist, the pregnant woman abandoned by her cold, controlling husband. We need more than proof of the affair. We need motive, pattern, prior emotional negligence." "She's been emotionally absent for years," I said, "but I doubt she wrote that in her journal." Kiran smirked. "We don't need her journal. We need her sister." Gwyneth Wynne wasn't a fan of mine. She thought I was too polished, too controlled. She preferred volatile men, ones who made you feel something even when it was pain. But Gwyneth hated being lied to more than she hated me. When I arrived at her loft in Soho, she was painting, a harsh, jagged canvas full of reds and black brushstrokes. "I know why you're here," she said, not looking up. "I need her messages, emails, proof she knew what she was doing, manipulating everyone." She let out a laugh. "You're not the first person she's managed." "Maybe, but I'll be the last." That got her attention. She turned to me, smudged in paint, eyes narrowed. "I'll send you what I have, but not for you," she said. "Then for who?" "For Jonah. And Sage. Someone needs to break the cycle." 3 days later, An anonymous Dropbox appeared in my inbox. Hundreds of messages, photos, audio files. One voicemail in particular stopped my breath. Isolde's voice, panicked. Grayson's going to find out, Luca. He's not an idiot. He already suspects something. If he leaves me now, the foundation collapses. His board will walk. I need him to hold the narrative. Just for a few months. Please, I'll handle the rest. She was begging. Not for love. For optics. I downloaded it and saved it twice. One copy for the courts, the other for the finale I was planning. The day of the baby shower approached. I sent out invites on cream stock cards with embossed gold lettering. No one suspected a thing. The guest list included both sides of the family, close friends, board members from the foundation, and key media friends I had kept warm over the years. When Isolde saw the invite, she beamed. "You're taking the high road after all," she said. I just smiled. It'll be a celebration no one forgets. Her only question was what theme we should use. I told her, legacy. She loved it. The night before the event, I walked into Sage's room to kiss her goodnight. She was asleep, arms wrapped around a stuffed fox. Jonah was still awake, reading. When I kissed his forehead, he looked up at me. "Do I have to smile tomorrow?" he asked. "Only if you feel like it." He nodded. "Are you going to tell the truth soon?" I looked him in the eye and said, "Yes, but in a way no one can ignore." The morning of the baby shower, the townhouse was filled with white peonies, candlelight, and catered brunch towers. Isolde wore a pastel Dior dress and heels she could barely walk in. She looked every bit the curated icon she wanted to be. People toasted her with mimosas, compliments spilled like perfume. I stood beside her, calm, courteous, and quiet. I wasn't the husband she thought I'd be that day. I was the stage manager. By noon, everyone was gathered in the living room under an enormous custom banner. "Welcome, baby Pierce." And that was when I stepped forward, tapped my champagne flute with a knife, and cleared my throat. "Thank you all for coming," I began, voice even. "I know this celebration has meant a lot to Isolde, and to all of you." She looked up, beaming. "So before we go further, I want to share a message. A voicemail I received not long ago. One that really captures the spirit of what today is about." I tapped my phone, connected to the sound system. Her voice filled the room. Her real voice, the panic, the manipulation, the exposure. Gasps followed. Then a thick silence. Isolde turned ghost white. She reached for the phone like she could unring a bell. And then I smiled. "And since today is about legacy," I continued, "I thought it fitting to introduce you to the true father of the child we're all gathered to celebrate." I turned toward the entrance. Luca stood there, frozen in horror, Clarice just behind him holding his hand like a leash. Luca Barone. Everyone. Father of the hour. People erupted, some in confusion, others in disbelief. Clarice stepped forward and handed out envelopes, photocopies of the financial records, affair logs, and shell accounts. I turned back to the crowd. "Don't worry, the caterers have been paid, but any further gifts can be sent directly to Luca's Upper East Side address. I'm sure he'll need them." Then I walked away, and the myth unraveled behind me like a dropped ribbon. The baby shower detonated the myth of our marriage in front of 50 people, but the fallout extended much farther. Within 24 hours, the video of Isolde's voicemail, carefully leaked through an anonymous source, made its way into the inboxes of board members, foundation patrons, and media editors. The footage was never posted online. That would have been vulgar. No, this was surgical, private, strategic. It was a scandal, not because it was loud, but because it was undeniable. Isolde didn't come home that night. She didn't call either, but her absence wasn't relief. It was calculation.
She was a strategist first, always had been. I knew she was somewhere trying to scrub the blood from the floor without leaving a trace. She would be making lists, threats, bribes, spin control calls to her most pliable media contacts. But there was one problem with spin. It only works when there's air left in the room. And I had taken that from her. When I picked Sage up from school the next afternoon, her teacher mentioned a curious thing. "Your wife called," she said cautiously, "asking if she could change the pickup authorization form. Remove your name." I froze. She what? She said something about a family restructure. I told her both legal guardians have to sign off for a change like that. I forced a smile. "Thanks for letting me know. Please don't approve anything without my signature." She nodded, but my jaw was already tight. Isolde had drawn her first line in the sand. And it was through our daughter. That night, Kiran arrived at the townhouse with a duffel bag full of documents and a rage I hadn't seen since law school. "She tried to file an emergency custody motion this morning," he said. "Claimed you were unstable, that you humiliated her in public and created an unsafe environment for the unborn child." I sat there, pulse slow. What did the judge say? Denied. He smelled the stench of PR all over it. But Grayson, this isn't over. She's going to go scorched earth. She already tried. She just picked the wrong battlefield. Kiran dropped the bag on the table. Inside were affidavits, timelines, child therapist statements, and photo records. "We're not just defending your rights anymore. We're attacking hers." "And the board?" I asked. "Half have called privately to express support. The other half are silent, but none of them are supporting her publicly." "She's radioactive now." "Good." I poured myself a glass of bourbon and looked out the window. "She's not going to walk away quietly," I said. "Then we won't let her walk away at all." Clarice called the next day. "She's meeting with a crisis PR firm downtown," she whispered. "I don't know the details, but she's panicking." "She should be," I replied. "She said she's willing to give you full custody if you sign a non-disclosure and make a joint statement about healing privately." I laughed. "She still thinks this is about reputation." Clarice sighed. "She's losing her grip. Luca's locked out of the firm pending an internal audit. I'm filing for divorce next week." "You okay?" "I've been waiting to be okay for 5 years. Now I'm just ready." Before she hung up, she added, "You're not just doing this for revenge, are you?" "No," I said. "I'm doing this because our kids deserve to live in truth, not under curated fictions. And myself. I deserved to stop bleeding in silence." Later that week, I met Jonah's new school counselor, a woman named Dr. Kendall Ree. She had kind eyes and a directness I appreciated. "Jonah is highly observant," she told me, "very self-contained, but he's holding emotional weight far beyond his age." "He's always been sensitive," I said. "Takes everything in." "Has he spoken to you about loyalty?" I blinked. "Why that word?" "He said he feels like telling the truth means choosing sides. He doesn't want to betray either parent." That hit harder than I expected. He shouldn't have to choose. "But he already has," Dr. Ree said gently. "The moment the illusion broke, he picked clarity. He picked you." She paused. "Don't underestimate how deeply he's rooting for you to win." It wasn't pride I felt. It was pressure. My son wasn't just hoping for my survival. He was staking his own on it. I received an email from Isolde that night. It was short. Cold.
"Grayson, I hope you understand the damage you've done to yourself, to your image. We could have handled this cleanly, privately. You've humiliated me, and you've weaponized our children. I hope whatever you gained was worth it."
Isolde. I didn't reply, but I forwarded it to Kieran. "Frame this.
I wrote. Shows her instinct for manipulation, her lack of remorse, and her strategic framing of the children as tools. Kieran's response was immediate. Done. Also, the judge has agreed to hear pre-trial custody testimony next week. You'll be the first to speak. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed one line. Make sure she's in the room when I do. The courtroom wasn't large, no jury, just a judge, a few attorneys, and a cluster of observers including Isolde's parents, her sister Gwyneth, and 2 reporters who pretended to be interns. Isolde walked in wearing a camel coat, no makeup, and a pearl crucifix, like she was auditioning for atonement.
She didn't look at me. Kieran rose first. Your Honor, we're not just here to dispute parental capability. We're here to reveal a pattern of calculated neglect, strategic dishonesty, and the deliberate use of a false narrative to manipulate public and legal perception. He gestured to me. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and stepped forward. I'm not perfect, I began, but I've been present. Every bedtime, every school event, every doctor's appointment. My children know me. They trust me. I am their foundation. I let my eyes flick to Isolde. Their mother has been many things, but honest isn't one of them. I paused, then continued. She carried another man's child, lied about it, asked me to claim it, to protect her public image. That's not parenting, that's propaganda, and I won't raise my children inside a lie just to make someone else's narrative more palatable. The judge nodded slightly. Understood, Kieran added. We'll be submitting the full timeline of evidence, audio, financials, and third-party corroboration. Isolde's lawyer objected. The judge overruled it. That was the moment her eyes darted to me, first time all day. And I met her gaze without blinking. After court, I waited outside with Jonah and Sage. We were heading to lunch. As the door opened and Isolde exited, she froze. Can I talk to them? She asked. Jonah looked at me. I nodded. She crouched down, reaching for Sage, but Sage stepped back behind my leg. I don't want to, she said. Isolde's smile faltered. Then she turned to Jonah. Sweetheart. He cut her off. Are you going to keep lying? Her eyes welled. It's more complicated than... It's not, he said. You had a baby with someone else. You told Dad to lie, and now you're mad that he didn't. She stood slowly, shaky. I'm still your mother. Jonah didn't respond. We walked away, and this time, she didn't follow. 2 nights later, I stood in the kitchen washing dishes when Jonah came up behind me. Did you mean it? He asked. Mean what? When you said we won't live in lies anymore. I turned off the water and faced him. I did. He nodded, then reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a small paper crane. I made this in art, he said. They said it's for hope. I took it from his hand, held it in mine. Then we'll keep it somewhere safe. That night, I placed it in the glass box on my desk, right next to the flash drive with the voicemail. The next morning, Kieran called. She's trying to settle. Full custody in exchange for sealing all court records and a signed gag order. I didn't hesitate. Denied. Figured. But she's panicking. Good, I said. She hasn't hit bottom yet. Then what's your next move? I looked out the window where Jonah and Sage were building something in the yard. I stopped playing defense, I said. Now I burn the mythology. The morning after court, I woke to silence. Not peace. It was the stillness of strategy, the breath held before a counterattack. I knew Isolde wouldn't go down from public disgrace alone. She'd regroup, reframe, and retaliate. That was who she was. Her ability to transform from victim to icon wasn't just survival. It was her currency. At 6:48 a.m., the damage began. An exclusive hit the Roe report. Exclusive. Respected philanthropist Isolde Wynne Pierce breaks silence on shocking public betrayal. He weaponized my pregnancy. She posed in a cashmere wrap, backlit by diffused lighting. No jewelry, no makeup, just truth. A media war had begun. The interview was full of soft tears and hard implications. I loved him deeply, but Grayson stopped being emotionally available years ago. I made a mistake, yes, but does that mean I deserve to be crucified while pregnant? I asked for privacy. He turned our baby into a press event. She never named Luca, never mentioned the voicemail, but she didn't need to. Her silence was sculpted. By 9 a.m., my PR inbox had exploded. Half the donors to our foundation suspended their funding. One board member issued a vague solidarity post. A Manhattan mothers group reposted the article with the caption, "She deserves peace." Clarice called, incensed. She's flipping the narrative. She's manipulating the lens, I said. It won't last. She's leveraging the baby. People forgive infidelity. They don't forgive men who hurt pregnant women. She hurt herself, I snapped. She orchestrated the lie. I exposed it. Clarice went quiet. Then, "What's your move?" I opened my laptop. "We dismantle the fiction, from the inside out." I met with Karen that afternoon in a private conference room at our law firm. He was already downloading the article onto our shared litigation server. "She's not stupid," he said. "She's building public sympathy to shield against court decisions. Then we hit her where her credibility lives, her nonprofit. You want to audit the Wynne Initiative? She's used it for years to control press narratives, launder relationships, even fund events she frames as public service." Kieran leaned forward. "If we do this, we find skeletons. Maybe hers. Maybe her father's. Maybe someone else's. You sure you want that blood on your hands?" "I want the truth. Whatever it costs." "Then we go forensic. I'll call 2 people I trust." Meanwhile, Clarice continued feeding me internal communications from Luca's firm. The deeper we dug, the clearer the timeline became. 7 months ago. Isolde and Luca began communicating daily. 6 months ago, consulting contracts were issued through shell firms tied to Luca's wife's family. 5 months ago, bank transfers started. 4 months ago, Isolde stopped sleeping in our bedroom. 3 months ago, the pregnancy. She didn't fall into a mistake. She plotted a pivot, and when I didn't play along, I became the villain in her rebranding arc. But this wasn't fiction, and I wasn't fiction's fool. Jonah noticed the shift first. At breakfast, he asked, "Why are people online saying bad things about you?" I paused with my coffee halfway to my lips. "Where did you see that?" "Luca's daughter posted something. Said you tried to steal a baby." I blinked. "She goes to your school?" "She's in Sage's grade. Her mom told her to tell other kids." I clenched my jaw. "What did Sage say?" "She cried." Later that day, I emailed the principal, then the school board, then our attorney. Kieran drafted a formal complaint within an hour. "Targeted harassment via proxy minors," he labeled it. Isolde was unraveling and dragging children with her. That night, Sage wouldn't eat. She just pushed her peas around her plate and whispered, "Why don't they like us anymore?" "They're scared of the truth," I said gently, "and sometimes scared people are loud." Jonah looked at me. "Are we losing?" "No," I said firmly. "We're just quiet. Quiet isn't weak. It's preparation." Within the week, our audit of the Wynne Initiative uncovered a discrepancy. $487,000 in logistics support, paid to a contractor that didn't exist. When traced, the shell company led to Luca's brother-in-law. The funds had been used to pay off travel bills,
media placements, and private security for events hosted by Isolde. Kiran looked at the spreadsheet like it was a bomb blueprint. This is jail time. Not if she settles. You want to blackmail her? I want to offer her mercy, the one thing she never gave me. The next morning, I sent a letter to her attorney. Dear Ms. Wynne Pierce, we have evidence of financial misconduct involving the Wynne Initiative and Mr. Barone's family.
Unless we receive full legal custody of the children and your formal resignation from the board, we will be obligated to disclose these findings to the State Attorney General and IRS. Grayson Pierce. Within 3 hours, her lawyer responded. Let's discuss terms. Meanwhile, Luca's firm announced his suspension pending investigation. Clarice, now legally separated, released a statement of support for whistleblowers seeking to dismantle systemic abuses of trust. She didn't name Isolde, but she didn't have to. Manhattan elite knew how to read subtext. The next board meeting for our foundation was scheduled for Friday. It would be remote, private, and final. Isolde logged in with her camera off. The chairwoman began. We'd like to address the recent developments involving personal matters affecting the Pierce-Wynne household. I raised my hand. I'd like to formally motion for the removal of Mrs.
Wynne Pierce from the foundation board, effective immediately, citing conflicts of interest, public credibility damage, and misuse of charitable assets. Gasps. The chairwoman turned pale. I second the motion, said Gregory, our treasurer. Discussion? The chairwoman asked. Silence. Then all in favor? 9 hands went up. 2 abstained. None opposed. Motion passed. My hand didn't shake. Not when I signed the paperwork. Not when I logged off. Not when Isolde sent me a single text that read, "You win." But this wasn't about victory. It was about restoration. I threw out every remnant of our curated life that weekend. Wedding photos, crystal flutes engraved with our initials, her scented candles, her French cookbooks, all of it. I reclaimed the space room by room. I left Jonah's and Sage's areas untouched. Those were sacred. But everywhere else, I reset the frame. Jonah helped me rearrange the bookshelves. Sage picked new sheets. This one feels like a fresh house, she said, curled up in her new pink blanket. It is, I said. It's a true house now. Will you get married again? She asked, wide-eyed. Someday, I said. To someone who tells the truth. The last confrontation came 3 days later, outside the courthouse. I wasn't expecting to see her there. Custody terms had been finalized, settlements signed, but she waited in the cold in a navy wool coat, sunglasses covering her eyes. You burned it all, she said quietly. I exposed what you set on fire. She took a breath. I loved you. I just wanted more. Then you should have built it with me, not behind me. She reached for my wrist, reflex, not affection. I'll never get them back, will I? No, I said, but you can still visit, supervised, until they decide otherwise. Tears slipped past the glasses. I thought I was the one with power, she whispered. You were. Until you used it to lie. Then I turned, walked away, and never looked back. It was a Tuesday morning in late April when the final nail was positioned, not yet hammered in, but hovering. The quiet before the gavel. The children were at school. Clarice had just finalized her divorce, and I was headed to court with 3 documents in my leather briefcase: a custody agreement, an IRS affidavit, and the full transcript of Isolde's voicemail, this time notarized. Kiran leaned in the passenger seat, phone against his ear. Her team just requested a private pre-hearing mediation. She's stalling again. I kept my hands on the wheel. Then we let her stall. The more she drags this, the more it bleeds her dry. She's already bleeding. PR firm cut ties. Her publicist resigned.
Even Gwyneth bailed. She's running out of masks, I said. Eventually, she'll have to face us bare. When we entered the courthouse, the press wasn't waiting this time. No headlines, no photographers. Just a quiet hallway, echoing with distant footsteps. The drama had shifted indoors now, into paperwork, custody terms, and final exposures. Outside courtroom 6B, her lawyer waited. She's agreed to settle on the following conditions, the woman said, handing Kieran a slim folder. Full custody awarded to Mr. Pierce. Ms. Wynne Pierce will retain supervised visitation. The Foundation Board resignation is signed and submitted. And the gag clause? Kieran asked. Removed. And the IRS audit? I said. She'll cooperate, voluntarily. I flipped the folder shut. And the child? I asked. The one she's still carrying? The lawyer hesitated. She's agreed to amend the birth certificate to reflect the biological father, Mr. Barone. She's finally admitting it? She's not contesting it anymore. A breath. A long, long breath. After everything, lies, manipulation, public sabotage, she finally dropped the mask. Kieran gave me a look. Still want to go in and testify? I nodded. She needs to hear it, even now. Inside, Isolde sat in the front row, flanked by her attorney and a paralegal. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, spiritually, like her voice had shrunk in the echo of her own performance. Gone were the curated outfits, the performative humility. She wore gray, plain and untailored. Her hands stayed folded in her lap like a student awaiting punishment. The judge looked at us both. Mr. Pierce, you requested to speak, though a full settlement has been reached. Yes, Your Honor, I said, with your permission. You may proceed. I stood, adjusted my jacket, and stepped forward. I'm not here to reiterate accusations, I began. I'm here to acknowledge truth. For too long, our marriage functioned on an economy of performance. Social standing, appearances, political leverage, those were the currencies. I glanced at her. And I was complicit. Until I wasn't. I turned to the judge. Children need something far more valuable than curated reality. They need stability, honesty, and security. I've committed my life to giving them those things, even while their mother weaponized narrative over nurture. A pause. But more than anything, Your Honor, I want the record to show that this isn't about revenge. It's about restoration, of my role, of my children's trust, of truth. The judge nodded. Duly noted. Kieran leaned close, whispered, powerful, but not overplayed. That was the balance. Make them feel it, without ever asking for pity. Afterward, I found Clarice in the hallway. She held an envelope and a bitter smile. Luca signed the confession, she said. Admitted to the money trail, even named the shell companies. Did he mention her? Not directly, but the implication is clear. I looked at her. You're going to use it? Clarice hesitated. No, I'm going to hold it. I raised an eyebrow. It's leverage now, she said. And leverage only works when it stays hidden. You're becoming dangerous, I smirked. No, she replied. I've always been dangerous. I just stopped pretending I wasn't. We shared a look. Quiet, forged in fire. Then she added, You're winning. I already won. No, Clarice said. Winning is what happens after survival. You're thriving now. That weekend, I took Jonah and Sage to the Bronx Zoo. Just us three, no security detail, no assistants, no interruptions, just the sound of children laughing at sea lions and pointing at giraffes. Jonah looked taller somehow, older, like the last month had aged him 5 years, but his eyes were clear. Are we going to be okay now? He asked, chewing on a churro. I ruffled his hair.
We're already okay. Sage tugged my hand. Can we get ice cream before we go? Absolutely. Later, on the ride home, Jonah said quietly, You didn't yell. Not once. Even when things were really bad. I glanced at him in the rear view.
I didn't need to yell to be loud. He nodded. You were loud in the quietest way. That line stayed with me, carved into my ribs like scripture. By Monday, Luca had vanished from Manhattan society. Word had spread of his resignation, his cooperation with the IRS, and the quiet disbanding of 2 investment portfolios. Isolde's name was no longer trending, replaced by the next scandal du jour. But in Upper East Side circles, she was radioactive. The woman who built her empire on image and lost it to a single voicemail. Her friends scattered, her allies distanced. Even her family offered only conditional support. I'd won. But victory never felt like confetti. It felt like silence, like breathing again after years of being underwater. 3 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten. No return address. Grayson, you'll never believe me, but I did love you. Not just for what you gave me, but for who you made me believe I could be. I destroyed that. I lied. I manipulated, and I lost. You were right not to protect me. I wouldn't have protected you. Tell our children something kind. I don't deserve it, but maybe they do. Isolde. I folded the letter. Didn't respond. But I didn't throw it away either. I placed it in a drawer, not out of nostalgia, but as proof that even queens eventually kneel. One evening, Sage sat on the floor with scissors and glue, building a collage from magazine clippings. Look, she said, holding up the finished piece. It was a castle, but instead of stone and flags, it was made of hands. Photos of palms, fingers, arms all layered together. What's this? I asked. A safe house, she said, made of people. I kissed her forehead. That's the best architecture I've ever seen. She beamed. Jonah walked in with a science trophy. First place. He didn't even brag, just set it on the shelf and smiled. Our house had no more shadows. Only light, structure, and laughter. Only truth. It was quiet at the lake house, the first kind of quiet that didn't feel dangerous. Jonah was skipping stones across the surface, counting each hop like a prayer. Sage was painting with her fingers on a piece of construction paper taped to the picnic table. A sunbeam caught in her curls, and for a moment, I forgot everything. The courtroom, the articles, the betrayals, just a father and his children reclaiming something sacred. Clarice had insisted we come here. You need to breathe somewhere that isn't paved in marble, she'd said. Let the kids feel grass again. Let yourself feel something that isn't tactical. So we came. 3 hours north of Manhattan. No press, no attorneys, no internet reception unless you climbed the dock railing and whispered to the wind. Just clarity. That afternoon, I opened the notebook Clarice gave me weeks ago, the one I hadn't touched. Its cover was blank, its pages too. But I began to write. Not a confession, not a statement. Just memory. From the beginning. The first time I met Isolde. The moment I said I do. The night I found out the pregnancy wasn't mine. The voicemail. The scandal. The silence after I hit play. Writing it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would, because now it belonged to the past, and I, finally, did not. The next day, a letter arrived. Clarice had driven back to the city for meetings and forwarded it to me by courier. It was from Luca's attorney. Mr. Pierce, this letter confirms that Mr. Luca Barone has voluntarily submitted to a paternity test, confirming his biological relation to the unborn child in question. Further, Mr. Barone wishes to relinquish all legal parental rights. He acknowledges his role and accepts any civil consequences associated with prior misconduct, including financial damages or reputational fallout. Sincerely, Greer Winslow, LLP. It was the final severance. The child, who had been at the center of the lie, the scandal, the collapse, would not carry Luca's name, or mine. They would carry hers alone. And with that, I knew. The story Isolde tried to script had unraveled in her hands. She'd asked me to lie. I told the truth, and the truth cost her everything. 2 nights later, I stood by the lake alone. The moon was split in reflection, half on the water, half behind the clouds. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. That's what healing is, not the thunderclap. The after, no applause, just air. Behind me, the cabin door creaked open. Jonah stepped out, barefoot and wrapped in a blanket. "Can't sleep?" I asked. He shook his head. "Too many thoughts." "Good ones or bad ones?" "Both," he said. "Mostly weird." He sat beside me on the step, silent for a while. Then, "Will the baby be our sister?" The question hung in the air. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "She's your half-sibling by blood." "But families are made by love, not DNA." Jonah nodded slowly. "Will Mom be okay?" Another pause. "I hope so. But she has to fix things she broke, on her own." "Do you still love her?" That one pierced deeper. I loved who she was, or who I thought she was, but I love the truth more. He didn't say anything, just leaned against my arm, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of his questions. The next morning, Clarice returned with bagels, newspapers, and an envelope. "This came to your office, marked private." I wiped my hands and opened it. It was from Isolde, again. But this time, it wasn't a plea, or a confession. It was an offering. Inside the envelope was a legal document, an agreement of full transfer of any remaining marital assets still under joint title, including the Tribeca loft and the summer art collection. She was surrendering everything. The note attached read simply, "You don't have to respond. I just want the ledger balanced." Isolde. It wasn't guilt. It was resignation, and maybe an apology, the only way she could offer one. Clarice studied me as I folded the note. "You going to reply?" "No," I said. "There's nothing left to negotiate." That night, we had dinner by candlelight. Just me, the kids, and Clarice. Sage told a story about a dream where she turned into a bird and flew over the city, landing on all the rooftops where she used to cry. Jonah said he dreamed he had a suit made of glass, and everyone could see his heart beating. I didn't tell them my dream, because mine wasn't a dream. It was real. Freedom. Not in the legal sense, not just from Isolde, but from the man I used to be. The man who let himself be rewritten in someone else's narrative. I was author now. Every word. The next morning, we packed to return to the city. I folded the kids' clothes, loaded the car. But before we left, I returned to the lake. I opened the notebook one last time. And on the last page, I wrote, April 2025. I buried the version of me that begged to be believed. Now, I simply am. Then I closed the book, locked the cabin, and drove home. 6 weeks after the dust had finally settled, I stood at the rooftop garden of the Tribeca building, not the penthouse Isolde once adored. That had been sold. This was the new property, a modern, quiet duplex I'd bought under my name, with floor-to-ceiling windows and no echoes of her perfume. The air felt honest up here. You could see the city not as something to conquer, but something to observe. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the urge to brace myself. Below,
The city pulsed as it always did. Taxi horns, distant sirens, the muted hum of life. But inside me, there was no chaos. Clarice stepped onto the deck, holding 2 coffees. "They're officially enrolled," she said, handing me one. "Jonah and Sage?" She nodded. "New school starts next week, smaller class sizes. Focus on creative development and emotional wellness." I took a sip. "Perfect." She hesitated. "They asked about Isolde. Again." "I expected that. What should I say next time?" I thought about that carefully. Then, "Tell them the truth, but gently. Tell them love sometimes comes in disguise, and that some disguises last longer than others." Clarice nodded. "You know they look at you like you're made of steel, right?" "I'm not," I said. "I just learned how to survive the burn." Later that day, Jonah and Sage returned from their weekend with their aunt. They ran in with excitement. No tears, no tantrums, just energy. Clarice helped Sage unpack her suitcase while Jonah flopped onto the couch beside me. "I want to help design my new bedroom," he said. "Absolutely. What's the theme?" "No theme, just light. I want it to feel like morning even when it's night." That landed deep in my chest, because I understood exactly what he meant. "You'll have that," I said. Light you don't have to earn. That night, I sat in my study, looking over the final settlement summaries. Everything was finalized. Luca's assets had been dissolved. Isolde's name had been scrubbed from every foundation board. Custody was permanent. The children's education, healthcare, and living expenses were under my sole decision-making authority. And the media, they'd moved on. Of course they had. But I hadn't, because victory isn't a headline. It's quiet, like a locked door finally closing behind you. Just as I placed the file into the drawer, a knock sounded at the front door. Clarice poked her head into the study. "Visitor. She says you'll want to see her." I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "She didn't say. But she's alone." I stood slowly, pulse neither racing nor calm, just steady. When I opened the door, I saw her. Isolde. She wore no makeup. Her hair was pulled back, a simple wool coat wrapped tightly around her shoulders. No entourage, no rings. No designer handbag, just her, and a white envelope in hand. "May I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, eyes scanning the space. "This is different," she said. "It's not yours," I replied. She nodded. We sat across from each other in the living room. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. But she looked tired, in a way I hadn't seen before. In a way that didn't seek sympathy, just honesty. "I didn't come to ask for anything," she said. "Good." She placed the envelope on the coffee table. "I'm leaving the city, moving upstate. My parents have a place near Rhinebeck." I said nothing. "I've enrolled in a trauma counseling program. Intensive, 6 months. Required disclosure, daily sessions. No press allowed." Still, I stayed silent. "I'm not doing it for you or the court. I'm doing it because if I ever want to look our children in the eye again, I need to become someone else, someone worthy." I looked her in the eye for the first time in months. "Do you think that's possible?" she asked. And for the first time, I answered without venom. "I think becoming someone else starts by acknowledging who you really were." She took a breath, not a sharp one, a grounded one. Then she stood. "I won't come back until I have something real to offer, something honest, even if it takes years." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She walked to the door, paused, then added, "You saved them. Our children." "I didn't save them," I said. I simply refused to let them drown. She nodded once, and then she left. Inside the envelope was a drawing. Crude, childlike. Clearly drawn by Sage during one of her visits with Isolde. It showed 3 figures: a little girl, a boy, and a tall man with golden arms. On the bottom, it read in slanted print, "Daddy holds the sun." I closed the envelope, filed it away, not as evidence, but as grace. 3 weeks later, I stood on stage at the Future Fathers Gala, an event I'd once only attended as a guest. This time, I was keynote speaker. I stood before a room full of men in tuxedos, but I didn't speak from that place. I spoke from the floor where I once lay shattered, from the bench outside family court where I once cried silently, from the sidewalk where I watched my life implode in public. I told them this. Being a father isn't about being perfect. It's about being present, about showing up when the world expects you to vanish, about standing firm when the storm tries to take your children, and about choosing, every day, not to let betrayal define you, but to let love restore you. The applause came like waves, but I didn't soak in it. I found Jonah's eyes in the crowd, then Sage's. Their smiles were the only reward I needed. 1 month later, on a warm afternoon in June, I sat with Clarice at a sidewalk cafe in Soho. We talked about the Foundation's new scholarship program, about her recent art opening, about Jonah's interest in robotics, and Sage's obsession with flamingos. Then she leaned back, sunglasses perched atop her curls. "So what now, Mr. Pierce?" I thought about it. "I think I stop surviving," I said, "and start building." "You've been building all along." "No," I smiled. "I've been repairing. Now it's time to create." Clarice raised her coffee cup. "To what comes next?" We clinked mugs. Later that night, I walked into Sage's room to tuck her in. She clutched a stuffed flamingo and asked, "Daddy, if you were a building, what would you be?" I laughed. "A building?" "Yeah," she said, half asleep. "Would you be tall, or wide, or floaty?" I thought about it for a second. "I'd be a lighthouse." "Why?" "To make sure no one I love ever crashes in the dark again." She smiled, eyes closing. "Good," she whispered. "That's the best kind." And that was the end of the war. No banners, no press releases, just a quiet house filled with light, laughter, and 2 children who would never again be pawns in someone else's story. Because now, the author was me, and I had only just begun. Some betrayals don't end with fire. They end in silence. Not the silence of defeat, but of clarity. When the noise fades, when the masks fall, and the performance ends, what's left is the truth. Love without honesty is just illusion. Legacy without integrity is just performance. This story wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming self. It was about surviving not only deception, but the subtle erosion of worth that comes when you're told to stay quiet, be small, and carry shame that was never yours to begin with. The journey wasn't to punish, but to rebuild, to choose peace over performance, to walk away, not to escape, but to arrive. Because healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply chooses to close a door and never look back. Thank you for being part of this story. If it stirred something in you, if it made you pause, reflect, or feel seen, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters here. If you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with resilience, truth, and redemption. Until next time, stay grounded, stay bold, and stay true.